Okay, returning for part 4, I wanted to put the drone back on the bench and show you some of the things I'm trying to overcome here physically. The camera is supposed to go up above and the GPS is up above. So the battery is underneath with some bad strapping, and the Lidar, which needs to be able to be seeing. In addition to that, balance was a factor. So because to get it balanced, I needed to move the battery more toward the front, which I couldn't do with GPS in the way anyway. So the problem then became when you plug in the battery, it obstructs the LiDAR. So I flipped the battery sideways, and I decided to run the wire up and over to the top to see if that solved the problem, and it does. The wire's far enough out of the way that the props can spin freely without it ever hitting it, and problem solved. Now, what I wanted to show you here was what the camera I will be using most frequently on here mounted is a DJI Pocket in a submersible case, which acts as my crash box, protecting the camera, protecting the gimbal. But like a DJI, this gives me a full 4K camera on a gimbal on a build-your-own drone. Not sure why nobody is doing this. Alright, returning to PIDs, I did find some information that gave me some idea to make some changes. So I found these numbers. They said they were reliable: 150, 250, and 25. Nothing in the control derivative. And no information on position Z. In GPS, there was some information, so I took it. I'm going to try it. The surface information was not there, but velocity had 4 numbers, and position XY had 1. I like to keep my strength low for my cutoff and 75 here for transition. Now we need to pop back over into the CLI and check something. The height that your LiDAR will go is highly dependent on the number that is in this command, which is get INAV underline max underline surface underline altitude. You'll see 200, which is centimeters. So that's 2 meters. That's about what this LiDAR is capable of. Others might do better, but this one doesn't. So we will leave that number alone, and we can simply exit from this. We don't need to save anything. Alright, now we're going to go back to tuning, only advanced tuning. There are elements we have not touched that we need to, particularly because we're doing return to home, etc. In this page, we will set a few things that these settings are fine. This particular one I did turn on, which is mid-throttle for altitude hold. Return to home, I would like it at least 40 feet high. When it gets home, I'd like it to be 20 feet high. And climb before return to home, sure. Climb regardless of position, sure. I don't have sensors anyway, so override return to home with throttle and pitch, etc. I don't want to come tail first. Failsafe only, land, sure, yes, that's what I want. These things are fine. Over on this side, there are
braking factors. There is navigation information, such as how fast it's going to move on its own when it's doing its own thing, waypoints. We will do that much further down the line, but I think this is good enough for now. We're just trying to get the thing to stand still and to perform nicely. Alright, so our next item would be on-screen display. I made some choices here in advance. I would like imperial measurements. I don't like the default. I like the aircraft crosshair. And not much else I need in that column, but if you notice at the bottom, you can change the font. And I want to be able to see mine. So I chose this. It's already been uploaded. And additionally, you will see now as I choose elements that they will show up in place because I've previously been here and dragged them where I wanted them. So the first one is fly mode and heading. Heading will tell me if my GPS is positioned correctly. Temperatures I don't necessarily need. Altitude I definitely want. Range, distance. Rangefinder distance is for the Lidar, so sure. Altitude or attitude, crosshairs I definitely want. That's about all I need from that section. GPS, ground speed, yeah. Let's see what else is here. Direction to home and distance to home. I want those. There's something I'm missing there. We'll come back to that if there's nothing else down here. In maps, yes, it was missing. It was in the GPS. It was satellites, which is here. That should satisfy everything I need. I leave the bottom right corner open for my DJI goggle data, and I might need a little room up at the top right also. Now we need to calibrate in the field. So to do that, we go up and to the right with the throttle and down with the pitch and roll. Now I have to make sure all surfaces or directions face the ground at some point. Now, in addition to that, I like to do what the other commercial ones do, which is spin around this way and spin around this way, and then just using up the 30 seconds. It'll end here in a moment, and then we'll be done. We're ready to fly. Okay, because I had to disconnect the battery and do it again, I'm reconnecting, and I will do the radio command once it's done doing all of its warm-up beeps. Up and to the right, down with the roll and pitch. All directions facing the ground at some point. Forward around, sideways around, down and spin. All right, stepping away from the aircraft, I will set it to arm. I was having some issues with arming, and I'm having issues again with arming, but for the moment, it arms.
Okay. It's needing me to raise the throttle enough to reach hover level. But it is working. I am not engaging any more than setting the throttle at a height and letting it. It seems to want to climb a little bit on its own. Where did it go? Okay. But it stays relatively stable. I wouldn't call it a DJI stable, but it's more like a Holy Stone stable. I'll bring it closer. That's pretty risky, considering it's doing a pretty good job staying stable. I do have shots of it higher up, but they're not visible there. All right. I went back and made some changes to see if I could eliminate a little more of the stutter. I may have done some damage to my motors when they got too hot. That's one possibility, but I feel like it's something else. I feel like it's a tuning-based problem. It sure is pretty close. This is without me giving it any directional commands. It floats around. I have to correct a little bit. It's out of view. Bringing it back down, it seems to want to collapse. I'm not sure why. This is my last test, and it still wants to do some of the things I don't like, which is fall too quickly. I can't seem to slow the props down. Still is hovering relatively in place. GPS did a good job higher up in the air. That's not evident in the footage because I couldn't fly the aircraft and change the camera position. But you can see it's doing pretty well. You hear it's got a little bit of a motor problem. I'm not really sure what it is, but we're close. We have gotten to hover and we've gotten GPS functioning.